What's good, everybody? I'm Jędrek, he's Sodek, and today we are here with a very eventful but slightly out of date modern metagame update for October 2022. Let's go. Alrighty, so this is kind of an unfortunate time, even not even week, but time in general to make one of those metagame updates, because we wanted to wait for the full 6 weeks of Dominaria Modern before we do one of those to have like full effect of those new cards, most importantly Leyline Binding on the format. And after we got those 6 weeks, Yorion got immediately banned in Modern. So this data will not be like the format will change to some extent because of this ban, and this data that we have here might be slightly outdated, as I said already. So before we get into our usual tier list, and we'll go from S to C as usual, we will talk briefly about Yorion getting banned. So, Sodek, what's your opinion on this change in the format?
In my opinion, I have a couple opinions actually. Look, the first and most edgy one probably is that Wizards should make more clear why they are buying the card, because after I read this explanation on ban and restricted announced, I was very disappointed. Technically you could find what they wanted to say, but it was so not clear to me what they were trying to say. Like they could say something like this: Yorion pies are both hard to get, and they require a lot of game actions, and this leads tournaments to go to time. So we ban it because like we want Sensitive Divine top or Second Sunrise, and instead they were they were close to this topic, but never said it loud and clear that they are banning this because of time, and this was very irritating for me to read it. Do you agree?
I don't agree. Like, to me, it was very clear that they mentioned that. They said, I think their actual words were that larger decks present dexterity issues, and this amounts, in my opinion, to larger deck takes more time to shuffle, which in turn makes games go to time. Like, to me, this was clearly a remark on that, because like deck size in general in Magic and the dexterity issues of shuffling a big deck, like their most popular format is Commander. So like by itself, the fact that the deck is large doesn't mean anything. But because you are not timing your rounds in Commander usually, like vast majority of Commander games are on a more casual side. So you don't have like tournament setting for Commander very often. And the fact that, for example, if you are playing either yourself as a Yorion player or against somebody who's not capable of shuffling a double-sleeved 80-card deck properly all at once, but for example, they have small hands and they have to like divide it into 240 or so card piles, and they have to shuffle it like, one and then the other, and then they will take one from each and shuffle it together and then maybe cut or something. It takes a lot of time to do that. And even if you are capable of shuffling it like all at once, it will still not be as smooth as shuffling a 60-card deck most of the time. So like this issue of Yorion adding to a clock, mostly because of that, was addressed properly in my opinion. So I do not agree with the fact that, like, in general, your tone was that you were disappointed with this announcement in like how they presented it. I was very pleased with it. I think they've said what they had to say, like assuming they said what I think they said. They said it properly, which is, I do think that this dexterity like acknowledgement was here purely for time reasons, because why would it be there otherwise? And like in general, my feelings are that Yorion was a card that has little to no danger in being banned. Like there is no danger to this ban. You ban it.
Like, in terms of power level, there were no signs of this ban at all.
No. I'm not talking about the fact that Yorion wasn't or was in danger of being banned. I'm saying that the fact that Yorion is banned is a low risk, medium reward move for WotC, because like there is zero cost for WotC to ban Yorion in terms of this does not invalidate any deck. This is not a card that most people were like super into. Like, for example, if you ban Max Opal, you have thousands of affinity players who are, gathering under your WotC headquarters with like pitchforks and stuff and demanding that you give it back. Nobody was super excited about Yorion as a card. You can still play those like 4-color decks if you want. And so you basically are paying little to no cost in like this capacity and like format capacity in general, and you are getting a reward of we got another companion out of the format, and companion is a pretty bullshit mechanic. So would it be better, in my opinion, if they banned companions in general? Yes.
Mechanic, yeah?
Yes. Would it be, if their intention was to ban to nerf for color, would it be better to buy an Renin 6? Yes. But in my opinion, it was a situation in which they've had gateway to ban companion, like a companion, for a reason. Like without saying that companions are bullshit, we admit our mistake. They just saw this gateway and they took it. And I think banning like saying they should have banned Ren and 6 instead. Like this is not what the ban is about. This ban wasn't to nerf for color. This was a ban of a bullshit card that they just had as a freebie, in my opinion. And I'm in general, I'm pleased with how it turned out. 4-color will probably still be good. To what extent? I think it's pretty interesting how 4-color and blue-white will now like interpolate or whatever together with leyline binding and stuff. We'll talk about it later because at the end of the video we'll also make our predictions of how the metagame or the format in general will evolve. So I will touch upon that later on.
Yeah, sure.
Anything else about Yorion getting banned?
Like the only thing is that from power level perspective and from like the relations between top tier archetypes, I don't think that something changed that much. Like 4-color wasn't a big player like last month or like a previous month even, and it was like losing popularity in my opinion, because in my opinion creativity is a better 4-color deck. And like okay, it's not the same style because you have this twin style of playing, then you can play a value game, but you can combo out of nowhere.
It's a totally different deck. Like 4-color like 4-color is much more of a blue-white deck. Like it's much closer to blue-white than it is to creativity, like play style wilds and philosophy wilds. It's like saying, I don't know, Dredge is a better red deck than Burn because you both play red cards. So like
you both play burn cards actually.
You even both play burn cards. So like I don't get this comparison, but it's true that 4-color was like down. That's true. That 4-color, as you can see, or you can't see as a viewer, but Xodek can see. Like 4-color was actually like the 4 most popular decks last month were in order: creativity, then I think Merktide, Hammer, Red Black in this order.
Yes,
but definitely those 4 decks were the most popular decks. So And I think Yawgmoth was also more popular than Four Color. So Four Color was at best like fifth or sixth most popular deck, and in general it performed.
Rather
It's not a
poorly.
top five deck in our tier list. Like,
Yes, and it wasn't the previous month, and I still don't believe, like, people like keep crying about how broken Four Color is, but the truth is the deck can be beaten in many different ways, and because of its like high variance problems because of being an 80 card deck, it was also losing a bit more to itself than other decks. So right now we won't have this problem. On the other hand, we won't have this ultimate late game button in terms of Omnat, Fetch, Crack, then bring back Yorion, play Yorion, win the game. So I'm curious how they will build these decks, because like there are some like a lot of work. Like I already saw 60 card elemental decks with Kahira. It looks kind of cool in my opinion, but like always the results on online tournaments will show us what this deck can do actually.
yeah. Yeah, we'll get back to Four Color at the end, and I guess in the middle as well a bit because it's on the tier list. So without any
Yes.
further ado, let's go into the tier list itself. And we've mentioned, like, for the last, I think, month or maybe even two, and by month or two, I mean one or two latest episodes of
Updates,
this.
yeah.
Yeah, latest updates. That Market is getting a bit less popular, and there is a good chance that we won't have an S tier deck this month in October. And we were wrong, because there is an S tier deck, but it's not Merktide. It's actually Yawgmoth.
Pam param pam pam.
Which was kind of surprising to me. Like, I did know that Yawgmoth is a good deck. Definitely, it's been a pretty great deck for months now. But I thought that if anything jumps into the S tier, it will be Creativity, and Creativity was the most popular deck. But what's very impressive is that Yawgmoth, while being one of the most popular decks, like top 5 or 6 or whatever, was the winningest deck in the winners metagame. The Yawgmoth had like over 80% win rate in the winners metagame. Well, while granted, like average win percentage in winners metagame is like 75% or something like that. Because like there is nothing less than like 70 usually, but still 80% is a lot. It's especially for a deck as popular as Yawgmoth. Like,
Because like to point it out, the more players play the deck, the more average results it should get, and like when the deck is very popular and gets such a high win rate on winners meta game, that's something to to keep in mind in the future. Overall, I think that Yavmod has all the tools to be, I don't want to say it's the best deck, because the meta game in modern at the moment changes quite fast, and more decks are showing with good results. Uh, but overall, I feel that Yavmod is here to stay. It will be like 100% in a meta game in a tier in the next month, and like there are all the tools you need for a good deck for Yavmod, because you have your strong proactive plan, you have ways to draw cards, you have a very strong plan B, you have good sideboard cards and options to find these sideboard cards in the matchups. So I just don't see a really good way to attack this deck, because even if you play hate cards, they will like have some form of anti-hate burst. For instance, you want to play Pitting Needle, then you go, okay, I will side in my one Outland Liberator and just hoard for it. End of turn, destroy your hate piece, and draw cards like crazy. So overall, it's hard to attack Yavon from like regular ways. Like for instance, creature removal isn't as good versus Yamot as versus any other creature decks, because if you want to attack undying creatures, you need to kill them twice. If you want, or combine it with like some sort of grave raid, for instance, unlicensed hearse.
I don't agree.
If okay, sure, you can kill mana dorks, but it's much harder, in my opinion, than it was in, for instance, like Meliria pot old times
Well,
decks. Yeah,
the difference is that you can ignore undying creatures. If you kill mana dorks and you kill Yawgmoth and Greased, any deck with removal spells can ignore a 2-1 undying creature because you will play, like, which decks play removal spells? Like Merktide will just have a bigger creature. 4-color will have a bigger creature. Red-black will have Fury. I don't know, Creativity will have, well, Archon or whatever. Like, if you, like, killing a mana dork early on definitely slows them down a lot. So
of course. Like
I wouldn't say that Yawgmoth is super good against removal as a deck.
like it's better than other creature combo decks we had in the past.
I'm not so sure.
I feel that's like let's compare this to Heliod, for example.
Heliod was insanely good against removal. Heliod was like the best deck against removal ever. The best creature deck against removal ever. Like, it was really hard to win with just removal spells against Heliod. That's what was good.
Like before Modern Horizons, yes, that's
Yes,
true.
but
after they showed a lot of exile removal.
Yes, but you are comparing it to Heliod when Heliod was good. So then, back then, Heliod was like insanely strong against removal. Like, you already mentioned Melirapot, and I think that Yawgmoth is a very similar deck in spirit to Melirapot, because you do have an okay fair plan. Like, Grease is a pretty strong card, basically on her own. And you do have a combo that you won't assemble every game, just like Melirapot at the end wasn't like dedicated combo deck, but you do have a consistent access to your combo because you have Yawgmoth and 8 tutors for it, or like 7, whatever, doesn't matter. And you can reasonably present like a turn 4 kill or whatever. So I think it's a very similar deck because you do have a bunch of tutors, so you have those toolboxy things you can get. You have a reasonable mana base, a reasonable plan B, and your actual combo, like when you have Yawgmoth in play, is pretty okay against removal at this point. Like, you can't really kill Yawgmoth without killing a full setup. Like, Yawgmoth on an empty board can get killed and provide no value to its controller, but like basically what we said earlier, you mentioned undying creatures, that undying creatures are good against removal, which is kind of obvious, and like you can ignore undying creatures if your plan is to answer Yawgmoth in a different way than killing it. Like, for example, countering it or discarding it or having Piffing Needle, or another way of ignoring the card Yawgmoth, or even throwing enough burn spells at their face so they can't combo because their combo costs life. So, like, I do agree that the Yawgmoth is definitely, will be a force to reckon with in Modern for the foreseeable future, basically.
Yes.
Okay, let's jump down to A tier. We have 7 decks in A tier this time. And those decks in order are Creativity, Merktide, Hammer, Red-Black Scam, 4-color Yorion, Living End, and Blue-Red Breach, which is a deck that finally capitalized on its paper performances and like modo-wise. So it finally broke out on modo, is basically what I was trying to say.
Yes.
Because for months, we've said that this is a deck that few people who live in states can outplay their opponents with, but it had very little modo results. And since we are filthy modo enjoyers, we do not care about paper tournaments
that much.
But in general, we were skeptical of the Breach deck because it couldn't break through on let's be real, the most competitive environment for Modern that there is, like by far. Like Modo is already talked about it many times, so no need to reiterate. But Through the Breach, or Underworld Breach rather, finally broke through on Modo. With I think Breach top 8'd like 5 out of 6 last challenges. I saw that on Twitter, something like that. So pretty consistent performances.
And let's also note that Blue Red Breach, at least in my opinion, and like it looks like it's still underplayed. So I assume that very few players who play this on challenges has really good results because they have at least one deck in the top 8 of the challenges. So that's impressive in my opinion, and this also shows that this deck will keep having these performances unless something like real hate comes down. For instance, people will start playing Lane of the Void, and like maybe it will happen, who knows, but so far I'm very, maybe not very high on the deck, but I'm a believer at the moment.
I guess I'm not super convinced. Like it's our lowest A tier deck, and it barely made the cut to A tier. Like it's an okay deck, and before you start writing in comments, this is not blue red, it has the fairy light. Yeah, it has some white cards, but we are not calling it Jeskai Breach. We are calling it blue red breach because I don't know, because just what we are doing. We started some kind of backwards from the last deck in A tier, and I wanted to actually focus on the first deck in the A tier, which is Creativity, which is my pick for the best deck in Modern if you need to find the best deck. Like if you are one of those people who are like, yeah, best deck, what's the best deck, what's the deck to beat? I think Creativity is the best deck in the format. I think it has similar vibes to Yawgmoth in terms of being a combo deck that can play a reasonable fair game. And like we are comparing Yawgmoth to Melirapod, and other combo-ish deck of that era was Twin. And I do think that Creativity has a very strong Twin vibes in terms of being a deck that capitalizes a lot on false tempo, because you have to respect Creativity as a card, and you can't tap down too low. And while they don't have the same I will tap your land EOT with Exarch, they can tap it with Ice.
That's super rude because I keep always my black mana open for Dark Blast, and they always tap it, then play fetch, go for the dwarf, go Archon, and I'm very sad.
And they are pretty good at beating removal because they can target multiple things, and usually one Archon is enough. Like Creativity, I think finally settled on the list that I think is the best approach to the deck, which we heralded for months. I think the username is Yriel, Yriel. They are playing the 4-spell pierces, some main deck mana leaks, like basically blue-red splash Vren approach to the deck. And while people were testing like late-line binding and stuff like that, I do think that this like Uber control splash for Ren approach to the deck is the best one. I just think this deck plays very well that way because you basically want to trade cards early on, and you don't really care about what cards you are trading, because if you delay the game for long enough to like turn 4 or 5, you will execute your combo and you will win, or you will be really far ahead. And I think that by playing cards like is Mana Leak the most exciting card ever? No. Leyline Binding is probably much more powerful card on its own, but I think that creativity has strong enough plan, and that cards that you are playing instead of like binding, or I don't know, like it's similar for me with persist and transmogrify. Like I know that Canister hates transmogrify with passion, like, and he always want to play persist in this deck. Like, in my opinion, minimizing the amount of non-red spells in your deck is a really good approach, because this decreases your fail rate greatly. Because if your deck can function off of Ketria, Triumph, and just mountains, and these lists basically can, it is much easier to not just like stop working on its own, because oh no, I have 5 colors of spells in my deck and I only drew 1 fetch land or something like that. So I do think that this version of creativity has by far the highest floor, which is what I'm interested in, because I don't think that the difference between the like low ceiling and high ceiling for creativity deck is that important, because all of those decks will have high, like reasonably high ceiling by default, because of how powerful their plan is. So blue-red control plus Ren is, I think, the best creativity build, and I think it showed itself to be the most powerful. I think Iriel, or however this nickname is pronounced, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing it, has like 5, no, maybe not 5, but like 3 or 4 top finishes in the last 7 weeks or 6, something like that. That's I think it includes showcase, definitely showcase top 8 and 1 challenge top 8. Of that, I am sure, and I think I saw more results, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, like what you were saying about the mana base, in my opinion, all comes down to if you have Vren or not. And like when you have Vren, the games are on easy mode. It's like Vren and one fashion to be sure, but like winning or like having a good position after turn to Vren is easy. Like the question is what your deck does when you don't have this Vren, or when it gets killed immediately. And I feel that this version, like you mentioned, like without many, like for instance, without the fairies, without many like very aggressive like persist into other like splash options, is something that will benefit you in the long run. And I kinda like the deck. And the only thing, like, I'm really scared of 4 spell piercers. Like every deck I'm playing, like maybe not loses to these spell piercers, but the fact they have 4 of them is scary. And it's really hard to do that much about it, because of Renan playing a lot of lands and Fable of the Mirror Breaker, they will have their mana, and eventually they will outplay you with like they play their like 5 creativity with double spell pierce backup, and you are dead most likely.
Spell Pierce is an insane card right now, I think, in Modern, with how the format evolved. And I think that creativity is one of the best Spell Pierce decks, and that's part of its success. I think Murktide is the other deck that's pretty great at using Spell Pierce, but creativity is even better. And I think that's once again one of the reasons why creativity is so good. And speaking of Murktide, it's the second deck in the A tier, by results. And like there is not much to say about Murktide. Like I guess it is. There is. I don't remember if I mentioned it last time, if I was already on that train, but I do think that Murktide should be a main deck Blood Moon deck now. I think that both Murktide and Red Black should be main deck Blood Moon decks. I think Blood Moon is really good right now, and if your deck can incorporate Blood Moon with ease, you should do so. I think there's a chance that you should even play 3-color Rhinos because it can be a main deck Blood Moon deck. I'm not sure, but I would really look for a Blood Moon, especially Blood Moon plus Force of Negation deck. Like I really am liking Force of Negation and Merktide right now out of the sideboard because I think Blood Moon plus Force of Negation or Blood Moon plus Grief is a very good plan against creativity. Because like especially Blood Moon out of blue decks, because once you Blood Moon them, yes, they can still cast creativity, but it's much harder for them to cast creativity with a protection spell, which is what actually beats you most of the time. So I do think that main deck Blood Moon is pretty great. I think you can cut on Merktides. I'm playing 2 now for I've been playing 2 for, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks, and I haven't missed the third one. I think you should play at least 3, and I would prefer 4 Ledger Shredders because they can allow you to discard this Blood Moon when it's not great. And in similar vein, I think Channeler is okay. Channeler is a card that is pretty great against creativity because it doesn't die to Ren that often. And even if it, what is actually the biggest problem of Ragavan against creativity is not Ren, it's Dwarven because sure, sometimes it will die on turn 2 to Ren, but you will bolt Ren and you will be 1 card down on it, but whatever. The problem with Ragavan is that it's very hard to attack with Ragavan post turn 3 or 4 because of Dwarven Mine. And Channeler does not have this problem because it will just have a flying and 3 power. And you have to clock creativity because eventually they have more Spell Pierces / Flusterstorms / Veil of Summer than you have counter magic in your deck. So if you just pass back and forth, at some point they will cast creativity with 4 Spell Pierces / Veil of Summer / Flusterstorm in their hand. And I'm not exaggerating. This actually happens. So you do have to kill them or land Blood Moon somewhat, maybe not somewhat fast, but you have to do that at some point, some reasonable point. You can just pass it back and forth. And for a similar reason, I do like Factor Fiction right now as a grindy card for Merktide because it's a card you can play on the end step, and you do want to play on the end step because then they can't combo you. So
okay, but aren't you scared of playing a 4-color card, 4-color instant versus 4 Spell Pierces? In the
no,
deck?
If they use Spell Pierce, then you don't have to worry about that Spell Pierce later on. So you are just trading cards, and you want to. That's basically it. For the same reason that you want to have early Blood Moon and early Pressure, you want to trade cards with them. You don't want them to sculpt a perfect 7 card hand because they will beat you with their perfect 7 card. So if you force them to use that Spell Pierce early on, then this one spell pierce less that you care about or you have to worry about later on. So yeah, I like Blood Moons. I like some amount of Channelers. I've been playing 2 and 4 Shredders. I can see playing more Channelers. They're pretty okay at finding Blood Moon as well. And in general, I do think that Merktide should be more of a low to the ground tempo deck these days. Than it was in the past.
Especially with Yavmot around, I feel that Dragon Lance
Channeler is very good against Yavmot, that's true.
That's something I would like to play in this meta.
Yep. And yeah, basically I cut Charms. I think playing Charms and Blood Moons in the same deck is kind of awkward, so I wouldn't do that. I would still, without Charms in your deck, I would play for Islands. I think you can play for Islands. I'm playing 4 Islands and Otawara. You can play 4 Islands without Otawara if you want, but I think Otawara is pretty great. And if you are playing 19 lands and you have 4 Islands and Otawara and every other land in your deck taps for red, it's enough red, in my opinion. So I like this mana base. It's pretty standard mana base. It's basically, if I tell you I'm playing 19 lands, 4 Islands, Otawara, and Fire Islet, you will know the other 13 lands in my deck because it's very stock.
Can't change it.
Yeah, Merktide is still a good deck. I would play main deck Blood Moons and I would play Force of Negation in the sideboard, and I still would advise you very strongly to not play Subtlety because that card is garbage in Merktide. Please don't do that. Red Black. Anything to add about red black other than it's a Blood Moon deck and it's good?
It's I think that the main success of this deck is that how Yavmot is well positioned at the moment and how popular the deck is, because red black maybe not stomps Yavmot and it doesn't have any chances, but like the combination of Fury plus an Undying effect, it's a one sided Wrath of God that also kills you in 2 turns. So
I think that qualifies as stomping. And like Yawgmoth is very bad against multiple Furies, and you can trigger Fury multiple times on one turn with this deck, like with no other, basically.
Even if
Dotty Voidwalker is also a problematic card for Yawgmoth.
Okay, that's so.
So like,
that's fine.
It's actually,
Maybe
I think,
stomp.
yeah. I don't know if it's worse matchup than Rhinos. I think Rhinos, like Yawgmoth has a very structural problem with Rhinos. Like I think you can actually build Yawgmoth to beat red black in the sense of, oh, I will have a bunch of like endurances or veils or Fotsis or what. Like there are cards that are good against red black as a strategy from Yawgmoth, and you can't really. I think the Yawgmoth Rhinos matchup is unfixable even if you try really hard. So
like you can play hate cards, you can play explosives, you can play kind punishment, but it's still not as good as people think it is. Like playing these cards won't win you the matchup on its own. Like it's not one card win situation.
Yep.
For color,
nothing to add, like except for good riddance, Yorion.
People like don't get tricked of for color is dead, let's move on. No, all these cards are good, and eventually the deck will come up.
Yes, but we'll talk about it later, as we already said many times.
Yes, that's true.
Living End, nothing to add really, in my opinion. It's just an okay deck.
The only thing, like, were we talking about the Black Splash of Shrikmo? The RVNG is trying this version. I kind of like it, but I also hate the like triple mana confluence.
I don't think we mentioned it, and I don't know. It's like I think RVNG played it for like 3 months now, at various points. And I don't think they saw any success with it. So, aside from leagues, but leagues are whatever. Okay, already mentioned Breach, so let's move on to the B tier. We have 11 decks in B tier, which is a lot. And those decks in order are Goblins, Domain Rhinos, Merfolk. I really don't know what to say it, but Merfolk, Burn, Amulet, Blue-White Control, Calibrated Blast, Dredge, Grixis Death Shadow, Scapeshift, and Glimpse. Okay, so we had Goblins as our deck to watch last month, and it actually performed pretty well. On top of it started as strong as it could because it won the first challenge post Dominaria, but then it had some other decent finishes. I think it's still in the B tier mostly because of that first finish, because it just added a lot of win rate to the deck.
The trick is that most of the results from modern challenges are from one player, Playtun Nguyen, probably.
And Playtun Nguyen.
Nguyen, okay, sorry.
It's like play to win, but it's basically. I think the pronunciation is somewhat close to Nguyen or Win even. It's definitely not Nguyen, as Polish people would say.
Yeah, I use my Ponglish abilities here. So
I think English people are even worse than Polish people at saying this last name, because it's Vietnamese or it's definitely Asian. I think it's Vietnamese. I think it's Vietnamese.
Yes, but most Vietnamese who are, maybe not most, but a lot of Vietnamese who are not living in Vietnam has this surname, even in Poland, even in Warsaw. Like I know 2 Nguans or Nguyens. I don't know.
I know one because he played Magic.
One played Magic and like played the Giant, and I would say hello to him from this position. So,
hello.
Return to Goblins. I still don't know exactly if the deck is good or the player is good, but the results are here, even if they are only made by one player. Maybe more players will jump into the Goblin hype train. The deck is like another creature combo deck, in my opinion. In terms of being a creature combo, Yavmot is probably a better deck, and according to what the legendary player TSP and Rek always say, don't play the worst version of the deck, and maybe going for Yavmot instead of goblins will give you like better results. But goblins are still there. If you like tribals, if you like playing Ether Vial, go for it. That's cool.
I think if you are like expecting a metagame that's very heavy in red, black, and rhinos, then you can consider goblins if that's your cup of tea. If you are usually playing Yawgmoth.
It's also like the deck is not affected by Grave Hate by any means, so that's a plus.
That's
Like
true.
Yavmot can be stowed by Black Leyline, for instance.
Yep.
Like you will not draw that many cards. Yeah, so.
Yes. In general, I do think that goblins are like this high B that goblins have this month is overstated. Like I don't think that goblins are actually a high B deck. I think they are like a mid to low B deck, but it's a viable deck in a format, and that's what basically that's everything that goblins player could ask for. I think reasonably because their deck was unplayable before Dominaria. Okay. Then we have Domain Rhinos, and it's any Rhinos list that has Leyline bindings. Some of them are 4 colors, some of them have this 5th color on a Triome, and sometimes even like an
Cyan Draco.
Sometimes they have Sign of Draco, sometimes they have like Unmoored Ego.
That's a good card.
Yeah, like in general, I think Rhinos are, some of them were Yorion Rhinos, but most of them I think were 60 cards still. And basically, whenever I think about Rhinos, I'm looking at Arceus Dota's list because I think his game sense and his philosophy related to the deck is really solid, and I think that his lists are always like very focused and very clean, and I think that's how you should build Rhinos. So
and you should check Rhinos Primer on Mystical Teachings right now.
Yes, you can on top of that, but I wasn't like I didn't mean this Dota praise as Dota is writing for our page, but in general, I think that even before we contacted with Dota, like I was pretty impressed with how he thinks about the deck, how he thinks about Magic in general, with his takes, and basically I'm playing 3-color Rhinos and I'm splashing Leyline binding approach that Dota has more or less. And yeah,
Rhinos,
no nonsense. And I like this deck. I think Rhinos is a pretty cool deck. If that's what
that's true.
you like.
Okay, Hendrik, you wanted to prolong this Rhinos section because the next section will probably kill us. Because it's Merfolk. Like Merfolk is like a long time meme in Mystical Teaching / Modern Solutions / other like everything
modern as in general, like like I don't think it's our meme exclusively by any means. Like people just like to ridicule Merfolk players in general.
That's true.
And honestly, I don't have much to say about Merfolk.
Like Vodalion Hex Catcher, yeah, like the new lord with flash. It's probably the reason. I don't see any reason.
Is.
Like I don't see any reason in terms of like how the meta game changed to make Merfolk better.
I see. Actually, Merktide got less popular, and Merktide was very good against Merfolk because turn 1 Ragavan is very good against Merfolk. And I can assume that if you like casting Spreading Seas or Tide Shaper on Creativity's lands actually Stone Rain them, like very close to Stone Raining, because they need one more land to get their Dwarven Mines online. So maybe. And Merfolk is a deck that Spell Pierce is pretty bad against. So
That's true.
I can see
Maybe
Merfolk
there's
being
some-
good against creativity, basically.
Yeah, and also like they will always have unblockable because of the Master of Pertrident and Lord of Atlantis. Maybe that's something here. The deck is also quite, maybe not quite good versus Fury, but it can because of like
As
having
far as
flash
tribal decks
effects.
go, I think
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
okay.
It also has subtleties, so it's relative. Okay, maybe not relatively easy, but it has tools to stop the like turn 2 Fury plus Undying effect versus Scam. So there are some reasons. Like I don't want to say reasons, but there are like some excuses to to keep playing the deck. But you know, like it had like a 7-0 finish in one of the challenges, something like this.
Like basically,
Had some results. Oh, even
Merfolk
finals even.
is the best it's been for a really long time, but it's still a fundamentally flawed deck in my opinion. So if you are a Merfolk player and you will play Merfolk, regardless of how the deck and how the format looks like,
This
now
is
is
your
a
moment.
very very good time to play Merfolk.
Yeah. Like, do you think it's the spring of tribal decks? Like more and more, like we were saying that playing a creature deck is just maybe not a stupidity, but it's a like very ambitious thing to do in modern. And at the moment, like the best deck, if is Yavmo, so a creature deck. Like we have some other decks in A tier and many more other decks, including like like real tribal decks in B tier. Maybe there's something there.
So first of all, it's not a spring because it's fucking October, but it might be a fall of tribal decks, and I don't really think so. Like while Yawgmoth is a good deck, a great deck even, it's a creature deck, and the difference between creature decks and tribal decks are huge. Like it's definitely
This
not.
huge.
It's not like saying it's like the same thing. I think tribals are
This huge.
a bit better than they were before, mostly because of Ragavan getting a bit less popular. Because once again, turn one Ragavan is a very hard thing for tribal decks to answer. So yep, like I still wouldn't recommend playing this deck to anyone who's not like a very invested Merfolk player, and they will play it anyways. So whatever. Okay, moving down, we have other like other
Burn.
basically mainstays of B tier at this point. We have Burn, we have Amulet, we have Blue White, we have Calibrated Blast. All of those decks were in B tier last month. And then we have the Wretch, which is a deck that was in C tier for months.
Or we're not in C tier even.
Or even lower
Then-
than C tier. And now it's in a B tier for some reason that I don't really understand, but maybe Sodek will enlighten us.
Like I would love to say you exactly why Dredge is better than it was earlier, but I won't give you this reason because I felt that Dredge was underplayed earlier on, and now it got some attention. There are still like two approaches. The first one is like to play, like both approaches are on one drop into Catalic Reunion effect into turn 3 Ox and play your ghouls, etc. So we won't see any like from the loams, any Bloodgas, any like of this bullshit. But some like the difference is in mana base. Some people likes to play Gemstone Caverns as 4 copies main deck, and like giving away being on the play like automatically, which I find it's insane because like your odds to find Gemstone Caverns opening is like in your first
40% in the first
like
7
38 something like this, yes, and
39.9, but yes.
okay, and you also need to find a playable hand. And for instance, you in this deck you like keeping one landers with gaze because this gaze will find you the second land, and when you find your gemstone covers, that's so cringe because it will often be a legendary land. It won't give you red mana after turn 0. That's really bad. And I like this land especially just when you're in a draw post sideboard. Sure, I like the approach. I like playing like 2 or 3 copies in the sideboard because Dredge is the really good deck to show the power of this land, because it's one of the only like 3 mana fast mana for 0 mana. I like Simian Spirit Gate was. Like you don't need to pay mana to get more mana. It's probably the only card that got in the format that can do this, and that's
Chancellor of the Tangle. Oh.
yes, that's also good. But it works only on turn 1. It's only in one deck in Neo form.
Well, Games on Covers only works like in literally the same spot. Opening hand.
No, because like this mana is not only on one turn with you. It will be forever because it's a land drop. So
I'm ridiculing you a bit.
Okay. So there are some changes, and I feel that in terms of like we were talking like shortly before about how like not terrible tribal decks are. And I feel that the similar discussion is with Dread. Like creature decks aren't as bad as they were earlier on, and Dread does not has that many problems to Ragavan because it has Dark Blast, it can create blockers like Narcomoeba, etc. So it's not the Ragavan problem. I feel that it handles plate removal quite well, and because it's dredge and you create more objects than they have removal. So I feel that dredge is in a fine spot at the moment. Like being a mid B tier is where the deck belongs and
Low
should
B
be.
tier.
Mid B tier is exactly where the deck should be, and like the only thing I'm scared of at the moment is that other graveyard decks are quite high, like Blue Red Breach, for example. Like it will get popularity, so people will react with a good grave hate cast like Lane of the Void, and Dredge is very soft to this. So that this can be a problem to the deck moving forward, but I'm a believer, and I hope that more Dredge players will wake up and see that the deck is actually playable and it's somewhat good. I won't say that the deck is broken, tier A, you should always play this. But if you see your chances, if you see that the metagame is okay for you, go for it. Hope for your good turn to reunions and have fun while like using graveyard.
Yeah, I think Dredge is an aggressively medium and inherently flawed deck still in the format in its current iteration. And the only fun deck or fun thing I associated with Dredge recently was I think Frank Carsten posted it at the GP Amsterdam. There was a Dredge versus I think Creativity matchup, and the Creativity player was on the play with Leyline and Flusterstorm backup for Leyline of the Void, and the Creativity player said, "Okay, I'm keeping my hand," and the Dredge player said, "I'm keeping my hand," and the Creativity player said, "Okay, so I have an action before we start. I will put Leyline of the Void in play," and then they wanted to play the land, and the Dredge player said, "Hola, I also have a pre-game action," and they put Gemstone Cavern in play and said, "In your upkeep, on your first turn, before you can do anything, before you can play your first land, that will let you protect this Leyline of the Void with Flusterstorm, they cast Wear and Tear on this Leyline." Which was, I think, pretty hilarious that it worked that way.
And I believe that Dredge won this game. Like,
I know that Dredge lost this match, but I don't know if they won this game.
Oh, that's. Okay.
I think Dredge lost this match, but I'm not sure.
I feel that Dredge was playing in semis versus Yavmod, so they should.
Oh, maybe
this one.
It doesn't matter.
Overall, Dredge is okay.
Dredge is not great. That's what we agree on. Then we have Death Shadow, the Grixis Death Shadow specifically, but we did see some offshoots of Death Shadow in different colors. We did have one red black and one blue black Death Shadow decks in top 8 of the challenges recently. Not much to say about those. Then we have Scapeshift and Glimpse rounding out our B tier. Same spot as they were before, in my opinion. Not much else to add about them. And then we have C tier. With 3 decks, we have Zoo, Affinity, and Tron. And we already elaborated on Affinity and Tron many times, so let's focus just on Zoo. It's what you expect it to be. You have Territorial Kavu, Nishoba Brawler, Scion of Draco, Leyline Binding, Wild Nakatl, Tribal Flames, Domain things. And like this deck is basically pretty horrible against the card Dress Down, or Kavu is very bad against Dress Down. So I think right now people are playing a bit less Dress Downs, at least in Murktide, because both Explosives and Blood Moons are more enticing ways of dealing with Saga. And while Blood Moon is pretty damn great against this deck as well, definitely.
That's true.
Dress Down is a card that just is very devastating against Kavu, specifically. What I like about Zoo is that it's a deck that uses Stubborn Denial well. And if Stubborn Denial is a good card, then it's really good. So at any point at the time, if you think that, maybe I should play some aggressive deck, but I really want to play like this sort of like counter magic, like Stubborn Denial, I think Zoo has a spot in a metagame when Dress Down is not very popular and Denial is a good card, basically. It still has a bunch of problems. It's a 5-color deck.
It's not the fastest one either.
Yes. It's like...
It's quite good at creating a lot of power on turns like 3, 4 and moving on. But it's... like... It won't win the game on turn 3, for instance. It's like not... It's probably not doable.
Yeah, I don't think it's capable.
Like you can go turn 1 White Knuckle, turn 2 4 Sign of Draco, then go Tribal Flames. That's still not enough. So, like maybe Lightning Bolt Tribal Flames.
No, like you can win if you go Nakatl into double Nakatl into Tribal Flames Bolt, then it's enough.
Yes. So that's it. Overall, I feel that it's like a worse version of other. Like for instance, if you play this deck while you're not playing Rhinos.
Yeah, more or less.
Like I feel that Rhinos
I don't have strong opinions about Zoo in general, so.
Like I feel it was a brief moment when people were toying with Zoo and they stopped. Like once they played enough games to realize that
that might be
not great. Like,
that might be the chance.
That's a typical way of like trying new decks. Like you play it a bit, then you like check if it works or not, and move on. So I don't expect to see Zoo in the next month. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we'll see it. I would be very happy to be wrong here because it's always cool to see new archetypes, and I'm very surprised that we saw that many decks in the tier list. And I hope
I'm not surprised at all.
Like, okay, so like
Murktide is very good at beating up on random decks, and if Murktide is less popular, then random decks will pop off. Like that's a pretty like straightforward train of thought to me.
Okay, would you say that Yavot and Creativity are worse at beating random decks?
Yagmoth definitely. Creativity, I'm not sure. So
because like Hammer should also beat random decks because of how powerful and fast it is. So is Living
well,
Hand.
but there are good, like if you are playing a random deck and you want to beat Hammer, you will beat Hammer with your sideboard cards, and there are no sideboard cards to beat Murktide.
That's reasonable.
Okay, that's it, I guess, for the tier list. Predictions.
Yeah.
So I think the most important thing to mention here is the evolution of 4-color. So I think that 2 cards that lost the most from Yorion Ban are Abundant Growth, of course, because it's a card that I don't think you will play in the 60 card version. although some people are playing it because the mana otherwise is not very good, but it's a card that even if you play it in a 4-color in the 60 card version, it's much worse if it only contributes once. It's a much worse card.
That's the trick. You don't contribute only once because you still have Teferi to bounce things. And if you like,
but you have to then use that. I played non-Yorion Abundant Growth Teferi decks, like early in MH2 lifespan, and Abundant Growth wasn't very impressive those decks.
Like it's not my opinion because I'm not playing for color. It was probably Respect the Cat who posted this on Twitter that Abundant Growth is still like it shouldn't be auto cut from the deck.
I'm not saying it should be an auto attack. It's a much worse card without the Yorion. And the other one is Omnath itself. I think that Omnath loses a lot of value in not like because you don't always have this natural curve of Omnath into fetch Yorion next turn, and because of that, because of those two cards specifically getting less powerful, and because of the fact that Leyline Binding is a card that blue-white can reasonably play, there is a chance of merging blue-white with 4-color to some extent. I saw some deck lists from various reasonable blue-white pilots with like, I'm playing blue-white with Leyline Binding and I already have a bunch of random triumphs, so I will have Renan 6 as well in my deck. So basically I'm playing blue-white splash for Renan 6 because I have triumphs and shotguns already. And I think this take on 4-color might be reasonable in comparison to I actually need all my colors early on and then I have to play Abundant Growth, which is like, even if you end up playing Abundant Growth, it's more out of necessity than it being actually good in those decks, I think, anymore. Because it's just not a very good card on itself. It's a cantrip that costs... It's a cantrip that doesn't offer any card selection, it costs mana, it requires you to have green to begin with, and I think that green is a color that because of Yorion Ban suffered the most, because Omnath is worse, and I think that the blue-white core of the deck is largely unaffected by Yorion Ban. So yeah, I think that 4-color will be more intertwined with blue-white in the next few weeks or months. Might be wrong on that. That's just what I think this deck will evolve into. I think that Murktide will slowly regain its top spot in the format once enough people understand that it's a Blood Moon deck now. And those are my two biggest predictions. I think that Blue-Red Breach or Breach, however you want to call it, will fall down from A tier because it's a deck that I don't think is super strong, and I think with more people trying it out, its win rate will go down because of that. And also people will actually learn how to play against it and how to beat it, because I haven't played against Breach too much, and honestly I have no idea how to sideboard in this matchup, because seemingly every card in your sideboard is good against them, but you can't just have 75 cards because they have creatures that are important to kill. So creature removal is okay. Like, if you think about it. They have Saga, so Saga Hate is okay. They have combos, so counter spells are okay. And they have Graveyard combos, so Graveyard Hate is okay. They Engineer Explosives is okay. Everything seems okay in your sideboard. And then you don't really want to cut many cards. So,
maybe that's the reason why the deck is so good. And I have all of your predictions, I have exactly the opposite of them, so I'm very interested in it's really cool for me to listen to your predictions.
I don't think that's the power of Breach, because it's doing a bunch of things in varying degrees of effectiveness, and those are not equally effective. I don't think it's it's as effective as a combo deck as it is as a Saga deck or as a Ragavan deck, or like, and I don't know what's the main thing of Breach, because I haven't played against this deck too much and I haven't learned about it too much. But once people know that it's mostly a combo deck, but you play Ragavan on the side, or you are mostly a Saga deck, but you also have a combo finish or something like that. Like, once you actually learn as a community, as a collective, what Breach is, and you will start sideboarding and playing your games well into this main plan that you should be beating, because that's their main plan, Breach will lose a lot of equity, I think.
Like, I have very different opinions on this. Like, I feel that like, if you wanted to have to learn the theory about the deck, there are like really good articles written by OMG,
Jesse Hopkins.
just I keep forgetting. Sorry, but like, I read the articles, were really good, and like, the theory behind the deck is already explained.
Yes, but not the theory behind its matchup against every single deck and what those decks should pay attention to when playing against Breach. Like, I think,
but that's the problem, you know. Like, you will over prepare for one strategy. Like, for instance, you realized, okay, there are Ragavan / combo deck, because like Ragavan is the legendary creature that turns Smoke Samber and it's good, etc. And like, you will prepare for this plan, and then suddenly you will start losing more to Urza's Saga. So you will think, okay,
I think
maybe I should,
you have you are really missing the point on, like, I think you just contradicted yourself so much, because there are great resources on how to play Breach, and they are not great resources on how to beat it. So that's actually it. That's actually, like, most resources on Breach that they are great for Breach players right now. But you have to play the matchup, because you have to know what your deck is good against from their deck as well. So actually, when people get to play more against Breach, especially since there are already very good resources on Breach, and Breach people that actually plays Breach both online and paper know the deck very well, and their opponents usually don't know the deck very well. Like, I think massive amount of equity for Breach comes from my opponent plays Endurance at wrong time, or my opponent cracks Grave Hate at wrong time, or my opponent has a wrong Graveyard, or my opponent has a wrong artifact interaction, because people don't know how to beat this deck, because they don't know how it works to this like intimate level that you need to beat it. And people who play Breach have a very good idea of what they are doing, because, as you said, there are
I
many
totally understand what you're saying. I just don't feel that it has as much of an impact as you think it is. And there's a counterpoint. More and more people will play Breach, so more and more people will jump into the hype train. Will try the deck. Will learn how to play it. And as a result, I expect Breach to stay in an A tier for the next
not a shot, I think.
Okay,
We'll see.
We'll see. Okay, moving on to other points, my like other guesses. I feel that for color, like Jędrek, you were talking about this blue-white splash Vren approach. I also heard about elemental approach with Kahira, with some results. Maybe that's the point. Like, not that many counter spells, more creature interaction, especially since modern became much more creature centric than it was earlier. Maybe that's the thing. I still believe that like all the other top decks, maybe without leaving, and we'll see. Like Scam, Hammer, Merced Creativity will stay in the top, and all others, like, maybe, who knows. I also expect the Tyrannus will be a bit better positioned moving on.
Yeah, I think that Yorion Ban actually did a lot of solid to Rhino players, because they won't play Yorion anymore, and it's garbage.
Yes, that's true. The deck will be more compact and like will do its thing more often. So and most other decks, like from B tier, like Burn Amulet, etc., will stay in their places mostly.
I guess that's it. That's it
Yes.
for this month. or this 6-week period, however you want to call it. Okay. Thanks, or I guess I will reiterate in the end. So thanks as always for watching. If you want to find more of our content, obviously you can go to our YouTube profile or page, and there are links in the description below, website, Twitter, Twitch, yada. And to reiterate our tier list for mid-October 2022. S tier, we have Yawgmoth. A tier, we have Creativity, Merktide, Hammer, Red Black Scam, 4-Color, Living End, and Blue Red Breach. B tier, we have Goblins, Domain Rhinos, Merfolk, Burn, Amulet, Blue White, Calibrated Blast, Dredge, Greasy's Death Shadow, Escape Shift, and Glimpse. And C tier, we have Zoo, Affinity, and Tron. That's it from us today. Thanks so much for watching as always. Take care and bye-bye.
See ya.